Hey everybody, all right, we are ready for installment number 3 for the making of an old song, or the remaking of the old song. Today I'm talking about rhythm guitar recording. This is a multimedia spectacular here because I actually have other clips. Based on popular demand from the last video, I'm not going to have a bunch of clips of me doing tracks like I did with the bass, because that was about as exciting as watching a middle-aged man grimace at the camera while playing a cheap bass, which is what that was. So anyway, for the rhythm guitars here, I'll just kind of get right into it. I did this just on Saturday, so it's been a few days. I did 3 main tracks for rhythm guitars, which for this type of music isn't really that much. 2 tracks left and right, 1 right up the middle, kind of like I talked about at the end of that bass guitar video. And we're going to go through here, I guess, a little pre-recorded segment featuring On the Scene reporter Saturday Travis, talking about which guitars I plan on using for the recording. All right, everybody, we're going to go through the potential suspects here for rhythm guitar recording. First off, we have the 1985-ish Kramer Pacer Focus, or Focus Pacer. It's a Pacer body with a Focus neck and a Seymour Duncan full shred in the bridge, and also an original floating Floyd Rose tremolo. It's tuned to standards, so I'm thinking that's a hard no. I don't want to deal with that. I have other guitars. Okay. Then we have the mahogany-bodied, walnut-topped, ebony fretboarded Seymour Duncan JB-equipped Flying V that I built a number of years ago. There we have him. And then we have the green Manalishi Les Paul shaped, walnut-bodied, maple-topped Seymour Duncan custom in the bridge, ebony fretboard. Built that, I think, in 2011 or 2012. And then we have the EVH 5150 series Deluxe with a basswood body, ebony fretboard, and a Wolfgang pickup in the bridge. So, which one of these am I going to record rhythms with? The answer is not you. We already recorded you. You're done. And there's also a Strat and a Les Paul Studio on the other wall, but they're out of consideration because the Strat is a Strat and it sounds very Stratty, and that's not what I want at all. And the Les Paul Studio has a broken string and some other stuff. I'll probably do a video on that. Me and the neck and I aren't getting along well. So, primary rhythm tracks, I have brought it down to this guitar. This is not the biggest sounding guitar. It has a nice mid-range, rolled off low end, not a ton of low mid-range, so it has a nice bit of cut, but it rounds off in the top end, so that'll be good for the main left and right rhythm tracks. And then this guy will be for the tracks right up the middle. It's probably the biggest sounding of my humbucker equipped guitars, so that guy is going to be used for the heavy track down the middle. And then just to give a view of the amps, here is the Marshall DSL 50 that I'm going to use for the main left and right tracks. There's a little cheap Bugera attenuator that actually does quite a nice job on top. There's the whammy bar that I took off of the EVH because I don't really want to have that squeaking around while I'm playing rhythm and not using the whammy bar. Here's a pick. Here's a paper template I used for making this thing. There's a vernier calipers, and there's a cassette tape with some recordings from 1996 on it, so that's exciting. And then here is the beast, the machine, the weapon. This is an old 5150 going through a Marshall bottom cab with vintage 30 speakers. This will be using for the rhythm track right up the middle. And thank you, Saturday Travis, for that wonderful expose on guitars that I intended to use for tracking. And it's actually even 2/3 right, you know, like everything else, you know.
It's a third wrong. I didn't actually wind up using the Flying V for the tracks up the middle for reasons I will explain in a moment. But first, I'll talk a little bit about how I set up the amps. What I wound up doing is using a different mic on the Marshall rig. The Marshall rig wound up being the left and right amps, and then the PV 5150 rig, which is actually a Marshall cabinet as well, that wound up going right up the middle. And so we have a little walkthrough of how I mic'd up those amplifiers and how that was all set up. Okay, here we are in front of my Marshall amp. I'm just going to do a quick overview of how I have it set up, why I have it set up that way, and what that means for anyone. First off, I have the microphone right on the edge of the dust cap and about 2.5 inches off of the speaker. So it's relatively close to the center of the cone. It should be a little bit treblier a sound. Plus I have it backed off so we won't have proximity effect. If I want more proximity effect, I'll just move the mic in, or I can move it closer to the edge of the cone if I need to add some bass to it. Before I did that though, I hooked up the guitar, I listened to the amp in the room, I set my levels accordingly. I did this at a relatively low volume. I stuck my head in front of the speaker, listened on the speaker how things are sounding there, wanting to get things relatively close. I didn't do that at a super high volume, obviously, because I didn't want to blow out my hearing. And I don't recommend that you do that either, but with an amp setup like this, I have the flexibility of knowing that at a relatively low volume, it's going to sound close enough to what it will at a higher volume, so that I at least have a good picture of what the frequencies are going to be like coming through the mic. Now the next step from here is going to be recording some sound snippets with this setup and see how it is, and then make adjustments from there. All right. Here I am in front of the 5150's cabinet. There's the mighty old 5150. Here's my Marshall bottom cabinet. You can see I have the mic here. A different microphone, largely because it works better on this short stand. I'm going to be miking the bottom right speaker, and I have that pretty well prepped. It's actually, although it's a different mic, the other mic is a Beta 56. This is a Beta 58. They have the same capsule, so the sound isn't dramatically different. The only real variance between the two is in the size of the body and in the size of the actual sort of pop screen. Okay, thank you once again, Saturday Trav. You were more correct this time. Now, this is where on the other video I would have shown some clips of me recording stuff, but the truth of the matter is that my actual recording clips didn't film very well, so I don't really have any. And I'm sure you're all very disappointed that you don't get to see me watch, like, play the. I suppose I could just grab a guitar and just go like this for 5 minutes at the camera, and you could all look at that and be like, wow, well, that's realistic, that's great. So instead what I'll do is just go straight to the audio. The first clip is going to be a brief clip of just the one Marshall rhythm guitar with that one microphone. So without any further ado, I will cue that up here. There we are. Okay, and you can hear that that was really pretty mid-rangey. It wasn't a huge guitar sound by any stretch of the imagination. Pretty mid-rangey. The main point, once again, was for it to mesh well with that bass guitar sound. So, if we jump ahead a little bit, I will play that sound along with the bass and the drums. And I haven't done anything special with the bass here. All right, so we have a little bit of a fill-in there from the bass, holding in the low end, and you can hear that that rhythm guitar having a little bit more context. Now, it really starts to thicken up when you add in the second rhythm guitar on the right. So here is the two rhythm guitars. All right, so that was, you can hear that filled in quite a bit. And also, it also helps me illustrate one of the points in making the guitar sound the way it is. So when you have a number of guitars, or a number of any instrument really, they all have certain frequency ranges where as you add tracks of that instrument, it tends to build up. And for electric guitar, that can get to be a real problem in the low mid range, especially with distorted electric guitar when it's a fairly compressed thing. So if you really want to, go back to the first video when I played the demo. I had no knowledge of this. The Pod by Line 6 gives you the ability to have these incredibly girthy guitar sounds that are utterly horrible in a mix because they're way too big, and part of that bigness is that low mid range, which sounds great when you're playing by yourself, and then you put it in a mix and your whole mix just becomes just like a wool blanket. So that's why when you're tracking multiples of the instrument and you're going to have tracks piling up, you want to avoid tracking too much in that frequency range because it starts to build up and then your whole mix turns into a bunch of low mid-range mush, or you wind up EQing the life out of your tracks so it just sounds weird. It's not the same. If you can get it originally in through the mic sounding that way, it always sounds way better than if you take some other sound and try to EQ it after the fact. It always sounds artificially EQ'd after the fact. So that's why I did that. So now if we kind of go into the other thing, because there's that third guitar, right? And why didn't I use the Flying V? I never did answer that question, now did I? So I didn't use the Flying V because on Saturday I was recording that part, which is a really, really easy part. It's probably the easiest thing that happens in this song between all instruments, certainly between all guitars, and I just kept screwing it up. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about this on the lead guitar one because it evidenced itself a little bit more there. But one thing that often can happen if you're like me is when something is super, super simple, it's really easy for your mind to drift and then you screw up. And that was happening a ton on the Saturday, so I just stopped and said, okay, we're not doing this right now, and went and did something else. I came back and thought, well, I'll take a stab at it now, you know, and it started to go a little bit better, but I grabbed that green guitar because I was actually working on leads, which I had decided to use the green guitar on leads, and thought, well, what the heck, I'll try this, and I had a good take through the PV, and so that's what stuck. So the middle track is that green guitar through the 5150 rig with the vintage 30 speakers, and here's what that track sounds like. It doesn't sound great. It's not an amazing sounding thing. It's kind of fizzy, kind of a little thin, not super impressive, but you'll see why I have it in a moment here. So here's that track by itself. Now, obviously, that's not a super amazing guitar sound at all. I would rank the left and right guitars a lot better as a guitar sound, and I would never use that guitar sound by itself. In the context of the mix, however, it seems to work. Why? Well, because it basically, it's kind of fizzy, and it just needs to add just a little bit of thickness in there and kind of join everything back in together with the bass. So let's listen to that guitar with the bass. Not bad. That helps a lot. The bass guitar makes that guitar sound a whole lot more substantial. So once again, it's knowing the role of which instrument is doing what in your mix before you record it. Helps to give some context. And now, let's play all of it together. And there you have it. That's all of the rhythm guitars. 2 one on each side and then one up the middle, and then obviously the bass guitars. And once again, on that clip, there is no EQ, there's no compression, just panning. That's about all there is on that. There's no reverbs or anything like that. That's just those tracks dry, bass guitars included. I haven't done anything to the bass guitars yet either. So hopefully that gives you a better idea kind of what the behind the scenes is when I'm sitting here tracking this stuff, what it sounds like, what I wind up doing with it, and kind of what I'm shooting for. If you have a little project thing that you're working on or just doing some demos or that sort of thing, hopefully maybe it gives you some ideas for stuff that you can try, or maybe it gives you some ideas for stuff that you can avoid. There's that too. There's value there. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I'll have the next installment a little bit more quickly than the last one, because I'm trying to make these a little bit shorter. Because 20 minutes gets to be a little lengthy for me personally, because I have to sit and edit that, and editing isn't that fun. Let's be honest. All right, thanks.